Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on this episode of Calling All Titans, I want to talk about Ancient Lord, the new Vampires Titan. Did anyone doubt that the Vampires would be getting a Titan? They were my number one expectation, since I wasn't sure that the Cthulhu set would be included. Vampires are one of my least favorite factions because they just don't work, and they seem redundant now with Sharks, who took over their endgame and made it work, minus the resurrection. So because the vampires don't really work, where should I begin discussing their problems? Without knowing where they went wrong, it's hard to determine how effective the Ancient Lord will be. The vampires have some good cards. They also have some really bad cards that seem unnecessarily restrictive. Their entire strategy is driven by the Count, who conveniently doesn't have the immortality or near vulnerability that vampires are known for. Many of their cards seem unnecessarily restrictive. I have to destroy my own minions to place a power counter on one of my guys. So often, that's a net loss of power. The Nightstalker is a slightly better laser tops, but I always seem to have trouble finding minions to destroy to gain the power. The Fledgling Vampire requires you to be losing on the base, even factoring in her power, and +1 power isn't that much of an incentive. Bardling at least gives you an extra minion. Mad Monster Party just doesn't make sense because the vampires want you to place power counters on them, so the use case is much more likely that you fail to place the power counters. Cull the Weak is really ineffective and boring compared to a card like Angry Mob. Buffet seems really interesting, but you need to win a base, which means most of your minions are there, so who is left to receive the counters? Finally, the vampires have very little destruction and are more adept at destroying your own minions rather than others. This makes it really hard to farm the Count and Opportunist. These cards just really do not work well together, and it makes it hard to find factions that say, I really want to play them with vampires. As in, vampires make me better, not the other way around. So what can Ancient Lord do to fix this, besides retconning the entire deck? This is a surprisingly difficult Titan to bring into play, even though it can technically enter on any turn. The vampires themselves have a really hard time playing 2 counters in a turn. Cull the Weak is not the way to do it. Because it wants power counters on minions, not even Summon Wolves can help. You generally need a well-timed minion and an action play to do it. This means successfully pulling off Fledgling Vampire, which might take time, as well as Dinner Date, since you likely won't have a minion to use with Crack of Dusk. Even if you have Heavy Drinker, destroy a Fledgling Vampire, then play Crack of Dusk, it's still 2 turns and 3 cards for the Titan, and you need a specific 3 cards. Or you can wait until you have enough minions and play Mad Monster Party. There is definitely an argument for drawing 2 cards to end your turn, waiting for the opportune moment. But when Ancient Lord comes into play, it is actually really good. You can place a +1 counter on a minion that already has one, while also increasing the effect when a minion gains a counter for the first time. Fledgling Vampires could become 5 power on entry with both abilities. Any card that gains a +1 counter is doubled for the first time, even Summon Wolves. When you destroy your first opposing minion, the Count will gain 2 power counters, allowing you to do more with less. At a minimum, the counter he adds every turn will equal that of several other Titans, while the ongoing ability has great potential if you have ways of moving counters. Suddenly, the vampires go from struggling to get power counters to overflowing with them. This creates some very interesting opportunities, including a Titan trade. Do you know who makes it really easy to bring out this Titan? Giant Ants. A single worker can do it by itself, and Giant Ants would love the additional power counters as it makes it that much easier to bring out their own Titan for the extra action that boosts power counters. This is actually one of the rare moments where you would want to play an Engine Titan on a base you intend to break first, as it will open a spot for death on 6 legs. For the ants, the Ancient Lord provides at least 2 extra power counters per turn, possibly more, and a combination that was pretty good before now looks really intimidating. I really like the mad scientists, but their lab assistants don't provide as much value as you think. However, with the Ancient Lord, the lab assistant now provides potentially another. With the monster, this can make you consistently play an extra minion. The first lab assistant places 2 power counters on the monster, who can play extra minions on back-to-back turns and be replenished by another lab assistant after the second play. There is also a natural fit with Air Doctor, who can combine with the Ancient Lord to provide 2 a turn. Build up a powerful and indestructible minion with Uber Serum, and then body shop him to duplicate the power as you see fit. I liked the vampire kung fu fighters before, and the extra power counter created makes the Drunken Master and Lady Whirlwinds much more efficient. This makes the Dragon Warrior more effective by extension, since you are transferring more power counters with a single talent. With the other means of transferring counters that the kung fu fighters have, the Ancient Lord really has a chance to shine and can build up a really powerful Dragon Warrior. You can use all the counters to break a base, then play expert timing to send them elsewhere to break another base. This is the type of power consolidation that actually makes Buffet work, since you are creating an ultra-powered minion, which the vampires could not previously do. Because of its talent, it might be tempting to pair the Ancient Lord with another faction overflowing with power counters, since only the rich get richer. However, I'm not sure that this is necessary because of its ongoing ability. You can continue to use the talent on the same minion, but you really want to maximize the ongoing ability, particularly with a card like Mad Monster Party, which is a global boost. Pairing the vampires with the disco dancers can create some great power swings. The rollers wouldn't have a counter and would get one from Mad Monster Party, then from themselves, then from the Ancient Lord, quickly gaining 3 permanent power each. Combine this with the fact that power counter divas can still copy the power boost of the standard action, and they can gain power as well, just not as much. Disco Inferno also becomes much more powerful, as copying the effect creates 2 power counters potentially. The vampires, particularly the Count, were previously prone to destruction and effects, and I like how the Ancient Lord solves this by making multiple minions better. It's hard to target them all, so instead of making a powerful Count, obscure the target by making multiple desirable minions. However, I do feel like the ongoing ability and talent work slightly against each other, particularly with the entry criteria. The vampires aren't that good at placing power counters on non-vampires. If you notice, the synergies mentioned previously all use power counters, even though the disco dancers use them lightly. So as good as this Titan is, the Ancient Lord is restricted in scope somewhat. It seems like you need to strike a balance between having enough to bring out the Titan and not having enough to waste the ongoing ability. Alternatively, you need to be so ubiquitous that the ongoing ability is triggered by every card. It's an odd paradox. The giant ants and the kung fu fighters can move the counters around, while the mad scientist monster can remove them for gains. But it's really hard to think about a natural fit for vampires without the counters. So what faction that doesn't use counters would you pair with the vampires to make their abilities work? Again, I think the pirates became a fit here, although they previously were not a fit. If a first mate were to be destroyed, Crack of Dusk can resurrect it with 2 power counters. The Ancient Lord can make it a 5 and continue to boost it. This becomes a slower version of the Giant Ants combo, but much less likely to be banned. I wonder if the vampires would have had more synergies if the Titan focused on making destruction easier, similar to the Kraken. They can only target low-powered minions, so if you can reduce power, that would be useful. But I still like the abilities it has, more than I like the vampires themselves. Does this Titan change your opinion about the vampires? Let me know in the comments. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.